Hey everybody, welcome to the third drive-through board game blog. This is for Thursday, May 2nd, 2013. This is going to be a quick one. Basically, I'm just going to talk about 5 war games that are coming out this year that I'm really interested in. There will be some debate probably from people that may not consider these war games. Now, I am a Eurogamer by trade, I guess you could say. That's how I kind of got into the hobby, other than when I was a kid. But thanks to Marco Arnaudo specifically and several other people on Board Game Geek, I kind of got bit by the war game bug. So if you've watched me at all, I've done reviews of war games and different things like that. I will say personally, the whole hex and counter troops and operational theater kind of thing is sort of lost on me. There are a few games like that that I enjoy, but mostly I like something with a little bit of extra historical flavor in them. So I like card-driven games, basically, and other things like that that sort of take it to that next step and add in lots of sort of extra thematic stuff and historical little tidbits that I really get into, like 1989, Twilight Struggle, Andean Abyss, and things like that. So let me just talk about 5 games and I'll explain to you why I'm looking forward to them, and then we'll go from there. The first game is a solitaire-only game. It's called Navajo Wars, and it's designed by Joel Toppin. Now, Joel has done a lot of development work for GMT games, but I believe this is his first sort of design effort. It's set in multiple periods from about 1600 to 1850 or so, and you basically are taking on the role of the Navajo tribe, sort of trying to fight off the Spanish, the Mexicans, and the Americans. And there's a lot of interesting tidbits here. I don't know much about the game, exactly, haven't read the rules, but just from what I've read, there's some sort of civilization ideas and things like that where you have to maintain your religion and some craftsmanship and things like that, as well as kind of sort of preserving, your population and things like that. So it's got a really interesting looking board. It's solitaire only, so it's something I can easily play. I don't really need a war game partner to play it with. I like the work that he's done with other designers, and I've liked those games, so I know he had a lot of input on those, and I've read some of his developer diaries, if you will, and some of the C3I magazine. So I'm really interested in giving this one a shot. Now, the next game on the list is the sequel to this game here. This is Band of Brothers Screaming Eagles, and I should say this is probably my favorite hex and counter game. It's a squad level game set in World War II. It's kind of in the vein of like a memoir, I guess, or Conflict of Heroes. But this has easily replaced those games for me. I like this quite a bit. It's very straightforward. There's a lot of subtleties in some of the rules that just make it very easy to play, but also very thematic. But the sequel is Ghost Panzer, with a little bit more focus on tank combat. Now, there is some tank combat in here, but I'm just a lot more interested in seeing how they flesh out the system. I know there's going to be some rules additions and things like that. So anyway, I'm just really looking forward to taking a look at the sequel. And I will do a review of this. I've only played it twice, and I just need to play it a couple more times and get a good sense before I can actually do a review of it. The third game on the list is A Distant Plane, and this is designed by Volko Ruhnke. I assume there'll be some development work done by Joel Toppin. This is set in modern Afghanistan, and it's sort of a sequel mechanically to Andean Abyss, which was one of my favorite games from last year. And Andean Abyss is a game that I still play quite a bit on Vassal. I've probably logged 15 plays or so. 2 players, 4 player, and I really enjoy that game. This is one of those examples of I'm really into kind of the history, even though this is not really history, it's kind of ongoing. But I'm really into basically all of the political elements that are involved. Like there's going to be the Taliban, there's going to be the Karzai government, there's going to be the US government, Pakistan's involved. And I really like exploring a little bit more modern themes, so I can kind of take myself out of reality in a sense, take a step back, take a look at what some of the cards do, some of the actions, some of the resources available to the different principles involved, and really try to learn a little bit about and just sort of empathize with the different characters. I'm not going to empathize with the Taliban, but I will empathize in a sense that I will get a sense of what resources and maybe some of their motivations, not that I would agree with them. So I'm really looking forward to that. And there's another game coming out right at the same time called Cuba Libre, which is set in the Cuban Revolution when Castro came to power. Very interested in that. I P500 both of these, but I'm more interested in A Distant Plane just because it hits a little bit closer to home. Next on the list is a game from Academy Games, and I'm pretty sure this is coming out this year, but I don't think it's 100% solid yet. This is about basically the Underground Railroad trying to free slaves and get them out of the South and up into the North. But the interesting thing about this game is actually a co-op. So I played lots of co-op games, you know, Pandemic, Defenders of the Realm, all kinds of games like that. But this is the first kind of historical co-op that I've seen. And it's very much a, I don't know that I call it a controversial subject because they're freeing slaves and that's a good thing. But it's about a very sensitive subject in American history and I think in world history. And the players will be cooperating and playing different roles and playing cards as card driven to sort of, you know, navigate slaves and free them and get them out of there, deal with some of the sort of extracurricular activities as well as the physical railroad and the different routes and trying to, you know, keep them away from the authorities or bandits or however you want to look at it, trying to recapture the slaves. So to me that's very intriguing. It's a co-op, it's historical. It's on a very dramatic subject, and I think, you know, that's very cool that they would tackle something like that. It's just something, again, I want to explore, kind of empathize, and sort of get into some of the, you know, problems and things that were presented to the folks at this time. So that's Freedom Underground Railroad. So the last game, and probably the #1 game I'm looking forward to in this list, is Churchill, another GMT game. This is a very, very interesting game. So it's designed by Mark Herman, who did Washington's War or We the People, depending on which version you have, which basically invented the card-driven war game. And so this is a 3-player game. You know, you can play it solitaire or 2-player, but it's described as a co-opetition. So you're being cooperative to win World War II as the Allies. So you've got the Americans and Churchill and Stalin. And you're trying to win World War II, but also at the same time trying to come out in the best position possible, sort of on the global scale. Now that's a fascinating topic to me because, you know, they had Hitler, Japan was an enemy, and they had to, you know, sort of tamp down these, you know, imperialistic forces that were trying to dominate the earth. But at the same time they had their own motivations and little plans to sort of do that themselves in a way. And so we had a lot of, you know, issues that arose out of that. We had the Cold War, Vietnam War for our side over here in America was supposedly driven out of that. And so that is a very interesting topic and not something I really know a lot about. We did study it in history in high school and things. And so I have a sense of the motivations. I mean, communism was trying to be communism and democracy and capitalism was trying to be itself. And so I have an interest in seeing the different roles and the different ways that, you know, this thing kind of sort of unraveled and some of the different possibilities and alternate history and the ways that it could have, you know, unraveled. So that was just a quick 5 war games I've been interested in. I had a comment, I think, on my first video that was like, hey, I don't see you talking about any war games, and I do review war games on occasion. So those are 5 that I'm looking forward to, and I'll probably review them at some point. So if you have any interest in sort of a historical idea and, you know, just want to explore that, I would recommend looking at these games as well as several other games, you know, that are out there. But these are definitely a different twist, especially the last few, you know, Churchill and the Underground Railroad and the Navajo Wars and all that stuff is a very different take on these subjects. It's not just kind of rote, you know, hex and counter, movement speed, attack value, you know, combat tables and all that stuff. So it's got some extra flavor there, and I think that, you know, these can have a sort of, you know, a little bit more of an emotional impact, at least, and maybe an intellectual impact, besides just, you know, terrain and troop movements and things like that, where my feeling is that they are a war game, and that war is more about other things than just, you know, the troop movements, which is very key, probably in more older history. But more modern history, in the case of like an Andean Abyss, that was a civil war, but I don't think it could have been represented as adequately as it was in Andean Abyss with just traditional hex and counter stuff. The way that he represented it, or chose to represent it in Andean Abyss, was, I think, very, very effective. So anyway, that's sort of my take on that. But anyway, those are 5 games. If you're into war games or historical games, then definitely take a look at those. So until next week. Any feedback's appreciated. Thanks.